I've been doing this for decades in California, and I know when you're getting the runaround when you go visit legislators. The first trick is you go in and visit and tell them about a problem, and then they give you homework. They give you a hoop to jump through, and that'll kill most of them. They know that. If you come back, then they'll deal with that when you get there. But these are like stall techniques because it doesn't seem the system's working. Have you guys, petitioned your government for redress? Council level, county level? Any of you? Yeah. If you don't see whether or not they're ready to accept input from the community, then we have a problem because it's not going to work. Also, one of the things I learned in California, walking around the offices, is that some of the legislators had a chart in their offices saying how a bill becomes law. And basically, the presumption of that document was it's organic. Somebody identifies some issue in the community. Well, when Lujan introduced that bottle bill, was it because people in his community said, we really need a bottle bill? I'd like to know who told him, who gave him that language, because that language was the same language by a Democratic senator in the Senate. What's going on?
So you're alleging a conspiracy.
No, right now I'm alleging confusion. I'm an investigator. So
I think it goes directly to conspiracy.
Well,
You're on your lap now.
I know. The left has this thing about conspiracy theories, but I think they're good.
Conspiracy facts.
Yeah, exactly. Let's hold them on. Way both sides. So, anyway, I'll keep you posted on what happens. I've been talking to my city people. I'm in Umis. Anybody live in Umis? Okay, I'm the only one. In Umis, I had occasion to get a hold of the public works director. This is maybe a year, a little more. And I didn't have any trouble getting to him. I didn't have any trouble getting out to visit and look at our property to see the issues that I was dealing with. And then he goes back and out of sight, out of mind, he doesn't respond. I plugged him in a month and finally I got what I wanted. I had another issue with a contractor that I thought did some damage on our property, and I called the city manager who I had just met with. His secretary shot me right over to some guy in public works, and he said, okay, yeah, I'll be out tomorrow. He didn't come out tomorrow.
Never comes.
I left a message on his voicemail. He never returned it. I bugged him a week or two later, and he comes out, but he says, I'm going out to take a position with another city. And he made a side comment about double dipping on a pension. That's just public service. And then, after having met with the city manager, I asked him to get me a tour of the recycling operations there for the city. I used to run one of those operations. I can walk into one and I can see how well it's running, and whether it's running well or not. And I met him at a pre-council meeting, maybe 4 weeks ago. And he said, I'm working on that tour. I sent him an email a while back saying it's getting hotter. I don't want to go out there when it's too hot. Maybe that's what they're trying to get. But he didn't respond to that email. So I'm in a city that appears to be okay, but no one's responding to me. And if we don't make it work, it ain't gonna work. And that's what I have to say for today. Any thoughts, questions? Okay,
I
guys?
would just stay on it, Leonard, just keep.
No, you have to. It's the squeaky wheel that gets the grease. Yeah.
That's true with pretty much everything.
I want a meeting with, Birdwell. And, I sent, an email to his calendar girl, and that was what I found with everybody. Oh, you have to get the email the person that scheduled it. That's the first truth you gotta email that person. So I did, and then I got a call back, and, said maybe the middle of July because of stuff. Well, is it middle of July yet? I'm having trouble getting there. Come log in them again, we'll see what happens. We'll see if Texas works. And some people are telling people to come here because they think it works. Anyway, that's my diary.
Once you form a group that can, work with these regulations, get a team of people that work with you.
Aaron just asked about working with people on the regulations. Here's what has to happen with the Texas Administrative Procedures Act. I've read it. It's old. It's been patched. It's not been thought about remodeling, if you will, with modern techniques, modern technology, things like that. And so I know it needs to be rewritten. That's why I'm trying to meet with people to say, you got to rewrite this thing to stay with the best APA we can. And we got to figure out a way, if it's possible, to satisfy Hamburger in his book, is administrative law unlawful? How do we make it lawful? Because these things are made by people who have not been elected. You have to tie them. Is that something we can do? These are the things that need to be done. And if it can't be done, if you can't tie it to the legislators, then the whole concept of regulation is got to be
Right. Everything, no one seems to understand what law they use, or at least they won't tell you. The judges they use the Texas rules of criminal procedure and the civil procedure. They never say they do administrative law, but that's what they do. And like you said, you only had 2 judges that are currently wanting to be current. Are they still?
Had any experience with administrative
You
law?
only had 2.
Yeah.
So,
About 40.
right.
Yeah.
There's your problem.
That's 5%. And you know what? That was a weak 5% based on my experience. And I'll tell you how that plays out, because in California, I was talking to a friend within this agency that I fought with. And he said, yeah, I've heard those attorneys for the department talking, and they just love to go up against those Beverly Hills lawyers. Beverly Hills representing, some superpower lawyers. But I had a story. I picked up a client who was under siege by the state. And I went up to visit them as a part of the process. I met with them. Their issue was on recycling e-way. And then I was taken over. We had lunch and met with a room full of attorneys. Now, this is a big name firm in Silicon Valley. And I'm talking to a room full of attorneys, and I didn't think about it while I was there, but when I left, I thought, what did he just pay for that hour? Because I'll bet none of those attorneys are less than $700. They could have been up to about $1,000 or $1,200 an hour. So I figured between $5,000 and $7,000 for them to listen. Well, I got that done. They gave me a check and left. I was supposed to go back and do an audit of the process that the recycler was using to make sure he wasn't violating any laws. And there were some problems that we had identified in our conversation before.
And Leonard bringing up his issues of these municipal corporations and regulations is a perfect segue into that, because it's all the Vatican. So why would you expect justice at the hands of a bunch of Satanists? Anyway, so that's what we're going to talk about today, is how municipal law is actually the Vatican. And I'm in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit over that matter, and I'm preparing a Rule 11 petition to the Supreme Court. So, you know, I'm not going to wait for the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals will probably take months. Matter of fact, the Attorney General, or the Pope's Attorney General for Texas, has told me that they're going to do a motion to dismiss because it's not a proper appealable issue. And you know, so we'll see. I don't really care. I'm going to be in the Supreme Court anyways. Anyways, to begin with, what's law? Law may define the command of the sovereign power containing a common rule of life for the subjects. Okay, anybody that's subject to that law. It's divided into the law of nature, the law of nations, and civil or municipal law. Okay, that law of nature is natural law. If you read Blackstone, you know, if you take this and drop it, it will fall. Okay, that's part of natural law. And so it's basically comes from the Bible. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. And you can do anything you want as long as you don't damage someone's person or their property. The law of nations, which is international law, and civil or municipal law. So first of all, I'm not a liar. Well, I meant a lawyer. No, I meant a liar. You should never take my word for anything. You should always do your own research. I've provided references to aid you in your research. I don't know everything. I'm open to any ideas. There's 4 types of people you'll meet in your life. There's the people who try to wake up the slaves. There's the slave masters. There's the people who have no idea they're slaves. And there's the people who like being slaves. Which one are you? Do you really know for sure? Are you who you think you are? If you can see through the illusion, then you are the solution. If the people don't know the basic rights and freedoms, how can they know when or if their rights and freedoms are being infringed? Never forget, the men who started this country were marijuana growing, whiskey drinking, tax evading rebels who left their beds at night to shoot at the cops. Think about it. That's exactly what happened. Okay, it was the militias, really, that started the War of Independence. Anyways, all tyranny to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent. And back to this one, the same stuff that caused the War of Independence is happening today. I'm being subjected to it. So we'll see where it goes. You know, we'll see. It's, you know, don't get me going. Anyways, I don't trust the government. I don't trust the medical, pharmaceutical, industrial complex. I don't trust the military industrial complex. I don't trust the mainstream media. I don't trust the bankster criminal cabal that owns the government, owns the medical, pharmaceutical, industrial complex, owns the military industrial complex, and owns the mainstream media. And if you call me a conspiracy theorist, I don't trust you. Government's not reason, it's not eloquence, it is force. Like fire, it's a dangerous servant and a fearful master. So, civil or municipal law is that which every sovereign kingdom or state has appropriated to itself. The appellation of municipal was originally confined to the laws of the Municipia, or dependent states, the dependent states of the Vatican, okay, what is now the Vatican. But it came by degrees to signify all civil laws without distinction. No sovereign state can subsist without a supreme power or a right of commanding in the last resort. The supreme power of one age cannot therefore be fettered by the enactment of a former age, otherwise it would cease to be supreme. Hence, the law last in date derogates from prior laws. Encyclopedia Britannica, New Dictionary of Arts and Sciences, 1771. This is what the Founding Fathers were reading. Volume 2, page 883. The civil or Roman and canon law, so civil law, Roman law, and canon law are all the same thing. Though they're not perhaps to be deemed, that's why it comes from the Vatican. They're not perhaps to be deemed proper parts of our written law, have undoubtedly had the greatest influence in Scotland. So this Encyclopedia Britannica was published in Scotland in 1771. The power exercised by our sovereigns and judges have been justified upon no other ground than that they are conformable to the civil or canon laws. And a special statute was judged necessary upon the Reformation to rescind such of their constitutions as are repugnant to the Protestant doctrine. Remember, King Henry VIII run the Vatican off, but the Vatican still owned the crown, okay? And we're going to show that. The Vatican owned the crown. What's now the Vatican owns the crown. From that period, the canon law has been little respected, except in questions of tithes, patronage, and some other few articles of ecclesiastical right. Okay, so it's all tied into the Roman laws in there in the background. But the Roman continues to have great authority in all cases where it's not derogated by a statute or a custom. Anyways, that's Encyclopedia Britannica again, page 883, volume 2. This is Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1856 edition. Law, civil. The term civil law is generally applied by way of eminence to the civil or municipal law of the Roman Empire, without distinction as to time when principles of such law were established or modified. In another sense, the civil law is that collection of laws comprised in the institutes, the code, and the digest of the Emperor Justinian, and the novel constitutions of himself. Law canon. The canon law is a body of Roman ecclesiastical law relative to such matters as that church either has or pretends to have the proper jurisdiction over, okay? Pretends. Remember, in the Declaration of Independence, they talked about pretended legislation, okay? So that's color of law. That's a fraud. And this is Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1856 edition, volume 2, page 8. This is also on that same page. The institutes contain the elements or first principles of the Roman law in 4 books. The digests and pandects are in the 50 books, contain the opinions and writings of the eminent lawyers, digested in a systematical method, whose work comprised more than 2,000 volumes. The new code or collection of imperial constitutions in 12 books, which was a substitute for the code of Theodosius. The novels are new constitutions, posterior in time to the other books, and amounting to the supplement of the code containing new decrees of successive emperors as questions happen to arise. These form the body of the Roman law or the corpus juris civilis. And we're going to see how Roman law and civil law are the same thing. This is Strauss versus Strauss, U.S. Supreme Court, 1941. Every system of law known to civilized society generated from or had as its component one of 3 well-known systems of ethics: pagan, Stoic, or Christian. The common law draws its subsistence from the latter. Its roots go deep into that system. The Christian concept of right and wrong and justice motivates every rule of equity. It is the guide by which we resolve domestic frictions and the rule by which all legal controversies are settled. And that Strauss versus Strauss is obviously the worst case. Causes and necessities for taking up arms, 1775, passed by the Continental and Vice Admiralty beyond their ancient limits for depriving us of the accustomed and inestimable privilege of trial by jury in cases affecting both life and property, to supersede the course of common law and instead thereof to publish and order the use and exercise of the law martial, and for altering fundamentally the form of government established by charter. We saw the misery to which such despotism would reduce us. Despotism is a dictatorship. Okay, they're talking about Roman law here. So you have martial law is part of the law of war, which is international law. You have private international law, which is Roman law, comes from the Vatican. And then you have international law, which is the law of nations. So there's actually, there's private international law and there's public international law. When they call it private international law, it has to do with contracts. That's why it's private. It's a contract. The only way you can get into it is by way of contract. If therefore we put aside the conventional law or treaty law of nations, it will be seen that modern international law is founded on the Roman law and on the canon law, which the latter was carried over Europe by the Roman Church, or even in England up to the time of Edward III, the Lord Chancellor was always an ecclesiastic. And that's the Transactions of the Society of Canada, second series, of the Royal Society of Canada, second series, 1899 to 1900, volume 5, section 2, the lines of demarcation of Pope Alexander VI, and the Treaty of Tordesillas, 1893 to 1894, by Samuel Edward Dawson. So international law, the legal system governing the relationships between nations, more modernly called the law of international relations, embracing not only nations, but also such participants as international organizations and individuals, such as those who invoke their human rights or commit war crimes. So you have to, remember, you have to invoke, you have to complain about the human rights violations, otherwise they'll just pretend they're not existing. International law, or the law of nations, must be defined as law applicable to states and their mutual relations and to individuals and their relations with states. International law may also be, under this hypothesis, be applicable to certain interrelationships of individuals themselves, such as where such interrelationships involve matters of international concern. And those are both taken from Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. This is taken from the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge A.H. Ellett of the Utah Supreme Court in the case Diet versus Turner. This is a war over the intrusion of the civil law upon the common law. The court of Diamond v. Harris calls the civil law superior equity. It's difficult to see how the courts of the state are to ignore the common law as a rule of decision when it's made so by statute and adopt civil law, even though it has the merit of superior equity. And that's they're citing that case here. In the meantime, civil law was the form of law imposed in the Roman Empire, which was largely, if not wholly, governed by martial law rule. Equity has always been understood to follow the law. To have superior equity is to turn things on their head. This is exactly what happens when martial law is imposed. If equity is the law, then it follows its own course rather than following the common law, thereby destroying the common law and leaving what's called equity in its place. So, and I go in and explain that a little further here. Well, this is the Declaration of Independence. Normally, equity is required to follow common law, the Bible. Remember, in that Strauss versus Strauss, it says equity is that governs the rule of all court cases, right? Normally, equity is supposed to follow the common law. Under martial law, there is no common law. Civil law is governed by martial law. All statutes are civil laws. Under civil law, equity can do anything it wants, thereby destroying common law, which is satanic. And that's what this is talking about. And this is also found in the Declaration of Independence. He's combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. Okay, well, that's talking about Roman law and the Vatican, what is now the Vatican, and then it wasn't the Vatican; it was the Roman Papal States, and we're going to go into what that was back then in 1776. For transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, that's talking about Roman law, the canon law, ecclesiastical law, and the Vatican. For imposing taxes on us without our consent, that's exactly what's happening with me. For depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for taking away our charts, abolishing our most valuable laws, altering fundamentally the forms of our government. Yeah, and basically there's all these municipal corporations are Roman law. For he's advocated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. What do you think all these military police are out here? That's warfare, okay? They're making war on you. You get stopped by the police, you're at war. And you have to understand that. And I already read this. Roman laws from what is now the Vatican. There's a common law of Europe, a common law of Russia, a common law of Germany, and a common law of Italy. There's common laws all over the place, actually, and common law comes from the Bible. And this is Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. Civil law, and Roman civil law are convertible phrases meaning the same system of jurisprudence, that rule of action whichever particular nation, commonwealth, or city has established peculiarly for itself, more properly called municipal law, to distinguish it from the law of nature and from international law. So again, Roman law and canon law. Okay, they're not talking about canon law or ecclesiastical law. They don't want to come out and say that, but that's really canon law and ecclesiastical law. It's all tied in with Roman law. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff that Congress has passed, but in my case, I'm just challenging the 1871 Municipal Corporation and the minor estate and the bar, because the bar is where this is all coming from, these foreign agents of the Vatican, and we'll go through and explain how that happens. The Vatican's Roman laws brought into the federal government with the 1871 Municipal Corporation at 16 Stat 419. The Roman cult's minor estate was brought into America with the Code of Law for the District of Columbia at 31 Stat 1432. And the bar and attorneys were changed from the bar with the Bar Treaty of 1947. And they're all violations of the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an established religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. The Founding Fathers had just gone through what we're going through, and that's why they put that First Amendment in there. And there's other stuff they put in the Constitution, the Bills of Attainder, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. There's a bunch of stuff they put in the Constitution because this is the kind of crap that was going on back then, too. This is Dred Scott versus Sanford. But in considering the question before us, it must be borne in mind that there is no law of nations standing between the people of the United States and their government and interfering with their relation to each other. The powers of the government and the rights of the citizens under it are positive, practical regulations plainly written down. The people of the United States have delegated to certain unenumerated powers and forbidden it to exercise others. Courts ecclesiastical. Spiritual courts are those courts which are held by the king's authority as the supreme governor of the church for matters which deeply concern religion. Okay, and that's taken from a book for the Institutes. That's Koch in the 1500s. This is actually a cite from Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition. And the laws and constitutions whereby the Church of England are governed. Okay, well, the Church of England and the Vatican, there's not much difference. Our diverse and memorial customs, our own provincial constitutions, and the canons made in convocations, especially those in the year 1603. Much oppression having been exercised through the channel of these courts on persons charged with trifling offenses within their spiritual jurisdiction. They do that all the time. I just filed 2 amicus curiae on people that one of them was charged. He's dealing with the court. He's in the Court of Appeals right now over federal statutes that don't have regulations associated with them. The Supreme Court has ruled that if they don't have regulations associated with the statute, then it's void for vagueness. And so there's another guy that I'm trying to help that's in prison in Chicago, waiting their show trial. Same thing, okay? There's no regulations under the statutes that he's charged under. And and they went and kidnapped him based on these baseless charges. It's a malicious prosecution. It's what it is. It's really, when it comes down to it, it's a malicious prosecution. And they do that stuff all the time. And Ken, right here, is being assaulted with the same kind of thing in Texas. So civil law, which is Roman law, baseless charges. It's an inquisition, is what it is. There's no judge there. It's an inquisition. It's a clergy. Okay, the Pope's clergy is what it is, and I'll show you that here in a minute. So Tina Peters, she's in prison in Colorado. Donald Trump, you saw the charade that he was exposed to. There's a county sheriff in Virginia, General Flynn. They coerced a plea bargain out of him, and then when he tried to withdraw it, they refused to let him withdraw it, and Trump ultimately had to pardon him. That's why he wrote that book, Pardon of Innocence, because he was innocent of it. They just make it up. They're just nothing but a bunch of criminals. It's a malicious prosecution. Roger Stone's another one. Trump commuted his sentence, and we're going to talk about that here in a minute too, and others. This I just told you about the amicus curiae that I filed on behalf of two people now, and I can file on behalf of someone else. I got to talk to him about it because I don't do that stuff for free. So how do you know you're in a Roman law inquisition? You get to appeal. That's how you know. You get to appeal. Courts ecclesiastical. The proceedings in ecclesiastical courts are according to civil and canon laws by citation, libel, answer upon oath, proof by witnesses and presumptions, and after sentence for contempt by excommunication. And if the sentence is disliked, if you don't like your sentence, you can appeal it. Administrator, a person authorized to manage and distribute the estate of an intestate or of a testator. Okay, they're talking dead things here, okay? That's the minor estate. That's why Heidi's material is so absolutely brilliant. Anyways, in English law, administrators or officers, why do you think they call it the Trump administration, okay? He's dealing with a bunch of dead things. In English law, administrators are the officers of the ordinary appointed by him in pursuance of the statute, and their title and authority are derived exclusively from the ecclesiastical judge by grants called letters of administration. At first, the ordinary was appointed administrator under the statute of Westminster, required the ordinary to appoint the next of kin and the relations by blood of the deceased. Okay, so they're talking about dead things. If you're a dead thing, you don't have any rights. That's Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1883 edition. Ordinary. This is taken from Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition. The term, a civil law term, okay? Civil law, that's the Vatican. For any judge who hath authority to take cognizance of causes in his own right, and not by deputation, by the common laws taken for him who hath ordinary or exempt and immediate jurisdiction in causes ecclesiastical, okay? The name is applied to a bishop who hath original jurisdiction, and an archbishop is the ordinary of the whole province to visit and receive appeals from the inferior jurisdictions. The word ordinary is also used for every commissary or official of the bishop or other ecclesiastical judge having judicial power. An archdeacon is an ordinary, and ordinaries may grant administration of intestates estates. Okay, that goes to the minor estate again. We're going to talk about that here in a minute. But the bishop of the diocese is the true and ordinary to certify excommunications, lawfulness of marriage, and such ecclesiastical and spiritual acts to the judges of the common law. Why do you think people were leaving Europe in droves trying to get away from that crap? To the judges of the common law, for he's the person to whom the court is to write such things. Court of the ordinary. In American law, court which has jurisdiction of the probate of wills and the regulation management of decedents' estates. Such courts exist in Georgia, New Jersey, South Carolina, and Texas. That was in 1856. New Jersey is now called a surrogate. And according to Nelson, he said there's only 4 lawful offices, constitutional offices in New Jersey. One of them is a surrogate, one of them is the court clerk, one of them is Nelson. Can you tell us who the other ones are?
The sheriff is the third of 3.
There's 3 in the sheriff. That means none of the judges are constitutional officers. Anyways, don't get me going. You're going to get me going here.
Yes, we're going to get you going.
Inquisition. is one of ways of proceeding in ecclesiastical courts, okay? So it's an inquisition is what it is. It's exactly what it is. It's an inquisition. Citation, a summons to appear. How many of you have gotten citations? How many get a speeding ticket from the cop? What is it called at the top of the damn thing? It's called a citation. Summons to appear apply particularly for process in spiritual court. The ecclesiastical courts proceed according to the course of civil and canon laws. Citations also used the name of process used in the English ecclesiastical probate and divorce course to call the defendant or respondent before them. And that's taken from Book 3 of Blackstone's Commentaries. And that's Black's Law Dictionary, 2nd edition. Fictions of law. You know, they're assaulting you with the fiction of law is what they're doing. Fictions were invented by the Roman praetors who, not possessing the power to abrogate the law, were nevertheless willing to derogate from it under the pretense of doing equity. Remember, equity can do anything it wants when you're under martial law. So Rome, it's well established that Rome was on a perpetual state of emergency. Why do you think they go and we got a war on crime, we got a war on terrorism, we got a war on this, a war on that? What do you think's going on? It's because of this crap. Fiction is the source of weakness, which in order to obtain its object assumes as a fact what is known to be contrary to truth. When the legislator desires to accomplish his object, so he becomes a legislator, okay? So when that fake judge is dealing with a fiction, he's not a judge anymore, okay? He's a legislator. When the legislator desires to accomplish his object, in other words, it's a kangaroo court. He need not feign, he commands. Okay, fictions of law owe their origin to the legislative usurpations of the bench. And that's Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1856 edition, page 520. When a judge creates or deals with fictions of law, he becomes a legislator. That's what they're doing. Yet still it was found difficult to set bounds to ecclesiastical ingenuity. That's the Roman cult, folks. For when they were driven out of all their former holes, they devised a new method of conveyance by which the lands were granted not to themselves directly, but to nominal fiefs to the use of the religious houses. That's usufruct. Okay, they're talking about the Sestakv Act of 1666. Thus distinguishing between the possession and the use, and receiving the actual profits, while the season of the land remained in the nominal fief, was held by the courts of equity, then under the direction of the clergy. So that bail priest with that military uniform on and that so-called court is really clergy. Okay, that's a clerical uniform under Article 10 of the Concordat that Hitler signed with the Vatican. To be bound in conscience to account to assess the use of the rents and emoluments of the estate. And it's nothing but an extortion racket, is what it is. And it is to these inventions that our practitioners are indebted for the introduction of uses and trusts. The foundation of modern conveyancing is still the foundation of modern conveyancing because it was brought into this country in 1901 with the Code of Law for the District of Columbia, and it's now codified at Title 31, U.S. Code, Section 363.6. Don't get me going. I just want to see if there's any questions on YouTube. No. So they're clergy. So this is what I put in my appeal brief, actually. Maybe one of these days I'll read my appeal brief. If there's a shorter amount of time, I could probably do that. Anyways, this is the Code of Law for the District of Columbia. 31 Stat 1432 in 1901 says the legal estate to be the sestake use. Okay, use is usufruct, it's Roman law. So that's codified at 31 CFR 363.6. Individual means a natural person. A minor means an individual under the age of 18 years. The term minor is also used to refer to an individual who's attained the age of 18 years but has not yet taken control of the securities contained in his or her minor account. And so if you're over 18 and you haven't taken control of the securities, you know you have a Treasury Direct account. and it's the this is the regulations for it. It's talking about it. And if you're over 18 and you haven't taken control of the securities, then but if you do take control of the securities, then you're participating in the fraud. And that's why I refuse to participate in that. It's a fraud. It's a nullity. I want that damn thing dissolved and liquidated yesterday. And I don't care what you do with the fake money. You can put it up your rectal orifice. Courts mean a court of law with jurisdiction over parties and the subject matter. Entity means any owner of a treasury direct account that's not an individual. Entity is a sole proprietorship, partnership, corporation, limited liability company, professional limited liability company, trust, the estate of a decedent, or the estate of a living person such as an incompetent or a minor. So that puts you under a Commerce Clause. Okay, that's where they get you. They put you under the Commerce Clause, and under the Commerce Clause, it brings the District of Columbia into Texas, and you have no rights under the Commerce Clause. It's a dictatorship. They can do anything they want. That's what's going on in these municipal corporations, in these kangaroo courts every day, even in Texas and all over this country. It might be correctly said that there's no such thing as a citizen of the United States. A citizen of any one of the states of the Union is held to be and called a citizen of the United States, although technically and abstractly there is no such thing. A U.S. citizen is a fiction of law. This is Public Law 100-418, August 3rd, 23rd, 1988. The term United States business means a United States citizen. Okay, it's a corporation. It's a fictitious entity. It's talking about that minor estate. That's necromancy is what that is, and that's satanic, okay? This is Deuteronomy 18:10-12, King James Version. There shall not be found among you any one that maketh a son or his daughter to pass through the fire, that useth divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch, or a charmer, or a consultant with familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer. For all these things, for all that do these things are an abomination unto the Lord. Because of their abominations, the Lord thy God doth drive them out from before thee. So they're Satanists. Bill of attainder means a legislative act. Remember, that judge, when he's sitting on that bench, he's not a judge, okay? He's a legislator. He's commanding, okay? No matter what they're for them, that apply either to named individuals, that's you, okay? When he issues an order, that's a bill of attainder. To named individuals or to easily ascertainable members of a group in such a way as to inflict punishment on them without a judicial trial. That's the Supreme Court, U.S. versus Brown and U.S. versus Lovett. Bill of attainder is a special legislative act prescribing punishment without a trial for a specific person or group. Bill of attainder is prohibited by the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 3, and Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1. And they do it all the time, okay? It's Roman law, it's the Vatican, it's D.C. So Texas can say they don't issue it, but that fake judge is a D.C. judge, okay? It's D.C. Why do you think they wouldn't convicted all those J6ers of their fictitious charges and put them in prison? Because they were in D.C. A bill of pains and penalties is a legislative act, though similar to a bill of attainder, prescribes punishment less severe than capital punishment. So a bill of attainder gives you capital punishment. I wonder if that's why is Texas still putting people to death? I bet you they're not. They used to be the killing machine. They used to kill all sorts of people. And it's all bills of attainder. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 3, no bill of attainder or ex post facto law shall be passed. Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1, no state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque or reprisal, corn money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin, a tender and a payment of debt, pass any bill of attainder, okay? That's all bills of attainder. Everything, all of the Texas codes are bills of attainder because that fake judge is not a judge. And Article 2 of the, I think it's the Texas, it says that there's 3 branches and they cannot mix. But they do it all the time. Next stretched. Don't get me going. You're going to get me going. Civilian. A person not serving, you think the pigs call you civilians. okay? A lawyer practicing in a civil law jurisdiction, a scholar in civil or Roman law. And that's Black's Law Dictionary, 9th edition. Those are 3 definitions. Status, standing, state, condition, situation. Compare a state. A corporation has no status as a citizen outside the jurisdiction where it was created. Corporation's a citizen's a corporation. If they're assaulting you with their U.S. citizen slave, then you're in the District of Columbia. The category law of status, the category of law dealing with personal or non-proprietary rights, whether in rem or in personam, is one of 3 departments in which civil law is divided. At common law, status means nothing. These people going around saying you got to change your status, well, they want to be in Roman law. They're Satanists along with the rest of them. They're nothing but Jesuits peddling their Roman law is what they're doing. This is taken from the Commentaries of Gaius and the Rules of Ulpian, which is a book that was published like 300 AD in the Roman Empire. Those things which perish by capitis diminutio, of which kind are usufruct, an obligation of service on a part of freeman contracted by oath, and matters enforceable by a statute. Okay? If there's a statute involved, and there's always a statute involved, then that's why they spell your name in all block capital letters. That's capitis diminutio. Copies of these documents can be found on my website and linked under my recent YouTube videos. For a complete set of YouTube videos with private information, shares a DVD with over 100 searchable law dictionaries and other books and forms, contact me privately at engineerwin@yahoo.com. Donations to support this work are appreciated. I prefer gold or silver coin, but as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept the IOUs, the Federal Reserve notes, the forced loans, the securities, the cash app gifts, the checks, the money orders, etc. Send me an email for particulars. Capitis diminutio is the destruction of the caput or legal personality. Capitis diminutio, so to speak, wipes out the former individual and puts a new one in his place, turns you into a thing, okay? They only have things in their warehouse that they call a jail, okay? There's only things in there, and turns you into a thing. Puts a new one in his place because the old and the new individual, there's legally speaking nothing in common. A juristic personality may be thus destroyed in one of 3 ways: by loss of status libertatis, this is capitis diminutio maxima; by loss of status civitatis, this is capitis diminutio media; and by severance from the agnatic family. This entails capitis diminutio minima. And this is a textbook in the history of the system of Roman law, Roman private law, okay? They get you into a contract. There's a contract involved. Actually, it's called a quasi-contract. It's a fake contract. They just make it up. And we're going to talk about that too. This is Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. Capitis diminutio maxima, meaning the maximum loss of status through the use of capitalization. When these County of Montague pigs and their bar member scum were sending me their letters, they were spelling my name in all block capital letters. The highest and most comprehensive loss of status. This occurred when a man's condition was changed from one of freedom to one of bondage, when he became a slave. Okay, so when they send you something in all block capital letters, they're talking to a slave. So your best thing to do is say no such person at this address, or actually better yet, I think, is no such thing at this address. It's swept away with it all the rights of citizenship and all family rights. That's Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. Plenary jurisdiction. It's a dictatorship, okay? And we're going to tell you why here in a minute. Supreme Court even said it is. If you're in the District of Columbia, it's plenary. Okay, it's a dictatorship. A court's full and absolute power of the subject matter and the parties in the case. Plenary is full, complete, entire. That's Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition and 9th edition. This is Bouvier's Law Dictionary. Plenary, full, complete in the courts of admiralty and the courts, English ecclesiastical courts. That's the Roman cult, folks. Causes or suits in respect of different courses of proceeding in each are termed plenary or summary. Summary is another name for plenary. In communist Canada, they like to use the word summary. Plenary or full and formal suits of those of proceedings must be full and formal. The term summary is applied to those causes where the proceedings are more succinct and less formal. That's Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 3rd revision, 8th edition. Plenary, a plenary power is a plenary authority, is a complete and absolute power to take action on a particular issue with no limitations. This is derived from the Latin term plenus, and that's taken from Wikipedia, but that's confirmed here by the Legal Information Institute, which is Cornell Law School. Plenary power, complete power over a particular area with no limitations. This term is often used to describe the commerce power of Congress. Under the Commerce Clause, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3, Congress is granted full power over interstate commerce. The court has found that states are not able to pass laws affecting interstate commerce without the permission of Congress. This is a National Mutual Insurance Company of the District of Columbia versus Tidewater Transfer Company, U.S. Supreme Court, 1948. We therefore decline to overrule the opinion of Chief Justice Marshall. We hold that the District of Columbia is not a state within Article 3 of the Constitution. In other words, cases between citizens of the district and those of the state are not included in the catalog of controversies over which Congress could give jurisdiction to the federal courts by virtue of Article 3. So, if, like with me, I told the judge, this is not an Article 3 court, you're not competent, I am entitled to an Article 3 court, and you're not. In other words, Congress has exclusive legislative jurisdiction over citizens of Washington District of Columbia, and through their plenary power nationally, okay, that's dictatorship, folks. That's because it's the Roman cult, too. That's civil law, that's the Vatican. Covers those citizens, even one in one of the several states, as though the district expands for the purpose of regulating its citizens wherever they go throughout the states of the Union. So you can sit there and say, I'm not a U.S. citizen all day long, and they'll just go ahead and assault you with it, okay? They're just nothing but scum. And if we're a Christian nation, they get their necks stretched. The people are a bunch of brain-dead idiots. Neither slavery, this is the current 13th Amendment, neither slavery or involuntary servitude except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. So you got to volunteer. You got to get you in a contract. They got to get you, that's what a quasi-contract is. They just go ahead and assault you with it. He, the prisoner, has as a consequence of his crime not only forfeited his liberty, but all his personal rights except those which the law and its humanity affords him. He is for the time being a slave of the state. Penitentiary is meant a penitent or ordainer of penances, a place for penitence. That's Anderson Law Dictionary, 1889 edition. It's amazing you don't find that stuff around anymore. Blacks have gone and excluded all that stuff. Penance is a punishment imposed for a crime by ecclesiastical laws. It's an acknowledgement of offense. Penance may be changed into a sum of money to be applied for pious uses. You can pay them off. Called commuting. And that's their quoting Book 3, the Institutes of the Laws of England, which is Coke in the 1500s, and Book 4, and that's Jacob A. New Law Dictionary. Trump commuted Roger Stone's sentence. He paid the Vatican off, is what he did. Bar members. We're going to go into bar members now. British accredited regency. All attorneys are foreign agents of the Vatican. The Bar Treaty of 1947 changed everything. They claim immunity under the International Organization Immunities Act of 1945, which is located at 59 Stat 669. Regency. That's why it's called regency. The office or jurisdiction of a region or body of regents, a government or authority by regents, the period by which a region or body of regents govern. And they claim immunity. Okay, they're the Vatican. Regent, a person who exercises the ruling power in a kingdom during the minority absence or other disability of the sovereign. That's Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. and their bar member scum on the fake bench just sit there and refuse to do anything to stop it. They intend to make sure. That's why they got all of their benchers, their fake judges are all bar members. Inns of court. These are certain private unincorporated associations in the nature of collegiate houses located in London and invested with the exclusive privilege of calling more men to the bar. And that's Black's Law Dictionary, 5th edition. City of London is foreign territory to the rest of England. The city of London was never conquered by William the Conqueror. During the convening of the Imperial Parliament, the Queen or King gives the throne speech. The Queen or King goes to Temple Bar, which is one of the gates into the city of London, and requests permission to enter the foreign territory. The Lord Mayor grants permission and is held as a ransom until the King or Queen returns. And not long after this, by general excommunication of the king and people of several years, because he would not suffer an archbishop to be imposed upon them, King John was reduced to such straits that he surrendered his kingdoms to Pope Innocent III to receive them again and hold them of him under the rent of 1,000 marks. And that's Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 2, under the definition of Pope. So the Pope owns the Kingdom of England and Ireland, that's now called United Kingdom, and the Crown, and the City of London. He owns it all, and has since. This is the City of London. Most people don't have the courage to share this. This is all coming from the Pope. This small little country that almost no one has heard about funded all sides of World War I, World War II, and will start World War III if we do not stop them. This is Concessions of England to the Pope, 1213. Look it up. We will establish perpetual obligation and concession. We will establish that from the proper and special revenues or aforesaid kingdoms for all the service and customs which we ought to render for them, saving in all things the penny of St. Peter, the Roman Church shall receive yearly 1,000 marks sterling, namely at the feast of St. Michael 500 marks, and at Easter 500 marks. 700 for the Kingdom of England, 300 for the Kingdom of Ireland. After 1213, the Pope, the pimp, owned and operated the Crown of England and the Kingdom of England and Ireland, and what is now the United Kingdom and the City of London. After the concessions of England to the Pope, 1213 was signed, King John had to pay money to pay his tribute. The Pope imposed his Roman law and started to do things to raise money to collect his tribute. It took only 2 years for the people to figure out what was happening, and the Magna Carta was the result. My blog is sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. My email address is engineerwin@yahoo.com. My YouTube profile is Sovereign Living. My Facebook community page, I deleted it due to censorship on the part of Facebook. My private group on Facebook is being deleted. Quite frankly, I haven't been to Facebook for months, maybe even years. Freelist.org private group is Administrating Your Public Servants. My Google private group is called Administrating Your Public Servants. Follow me on Steemit, Sovereignty International. HowTube, I have a Sovereignty International subscription profile, and Rumble, Sovereignty International, although I have trouble uploading there. And True Social, Engineer Win. This is a Canadian court case, Perlman versus Piché and Attorney General of Canada. The Magna Carta is not a unilateral act emanating solely from the spontaneous will of the king, as the charters of the predecessors of the John. Neither is it a treaty, for we cannot say it was concluded between two legitimate and independent sovereignties, nor between two nations, nor is it a law. The barons do not appear in it as subjects, for they are freed from their promise of fidelity, and the king, brought captive, placed before them, submitted to the conditions which the conquerors imposed upon him. Magna Carta is therefore a contract, but resembles a treaty concluded between two nations in that one of the parties, in virtue of the law of war, can impose its will upon the other. Magna Carta is full of prohibitions against the crown for their non-judicial proceedings. No freeman shall be taken or imprisoned or seized or outlawed or exiled or in any way destroyed, nor shall we go upon him nor send upon him, but by the lawful judgment of his peers of the law of the land. That's section 29. No bailiff for the future shall upon his own unsupported complaint put anyone to his law without credible witnesses brought for their purposes. Section 38, that shit goes out all the time today. To none will we sell, to none will we refuse, delay, right, or justice. They sell their justice all the time, these Baal priest Satanists. An attorney, he is, however, in a sense, an officer of the state with an obligation to the court. That's Book 7, Corpus Juris Secundum. His first duties to the court and to the public, not to the client. And whenever his duties to the client conflict with those as an officer of the court, the administration of justice, the former must yield to the latter. In other words, he sells you into slavery. Clients are also called wards of the court. If you're a ward of the court, you're an imbecile. Wards of the court, infants and persons of unsound mind. Their rights must be guarded jealously. Oh, yeah, they're going to protect your rights. Oh, yeah, they're going to protect your rights while they sell you into slavery and fleece you with as much as they possibly can. A ward of the court's an imbecile. A ward of the court's not competent. Everything's about competence and incompetence. That's why they're representing you, because you're not competent to make decisions for yourself. Therefore, the attorney's going to make the decisions for you. There's no such thing as an incompetent sovereign. Do you know who you are? The attorney's job is to make sure there are no appealable issues. So how do they do that? Well, first of all, they fail to object to the denials of due process of law. They fail to object to irregularities in the procedure. They fail to object to the hearsay evidence. They testify against you. It's a Roman law and an inquisition. There's no justice going to go in there. They're going to make some money. They're a bunch of fucking thieves. How do they testify against you? They admit the jurisdiction. They enter pleas for you. They falsely accuse you. They continue cases, thereby denying your right to a speedy trial. Impropriety persona, in one's own proper person. It's a rule in pleading that pleas to the jurisdiction of the court must be pled impropriety persona, because if pleaded by attorney, they admit the jurisdiction. As an attorney is an officer of the court, he's presumed to plead after having obtained leave, which admits the jurisdiction. The privilege against self-incrimination is neither accorded to the passive resistance nor the person who is ignorant of his rights, nor to one indifferent thereto. It is a fighting clause. Its benefits can be retained only by sustained combat. It cannot be retained by attorney or solicitor. It is valid only when assisted by a belligerent claimant in person. The one who's persuaded by 100 words or moral suasion to testify or produce documents rather than to make a last-ditch stand simply loses the protection. Once he testifies to part, he's waived his right and must on cross-examine or otherwise testify as to the whole transaction. He must refuse to answer or produce and test the matter in contempt proceedings or by habeas corpus. And that's District Judge James Albert Fee, U.S. versus Johnson, 1947. So how did the prosecutor and your own attorney falsely accuse you? Under their rules of ethics, they're not allowed to make false statements against you. So then that means that the judge presumes that everything that fucking liar is saying is the truth. But your only remedy is to object to their false statements. And if you have an attorney, you're not allowed to even speak. Because of their rules of ethics, any statement they make, they're not objected to or admitted as the truth. Because you and your attorney admitted them by failing to object. Judge works with the state, prosecutor works with the state, police or witness works with the state. The vast majority of the disputes that the police initiate on behalf of their employer are also adjudicated by their employer, where the plaintiff, the judge, the antagonist, the police, and the only witness, also the pigs, all represent the same party, and since no corpus delicti, mens reus, or acts reus can be produced, doesn't technically qualify to be heard according to its own laws. The state, therefore, is indistinguishable from a criminal cartel. It's the Vatican. It's the Pope. It's an inquisition. I have exclusive content available on howto.com. It's a good thing this came along because now I can chill out a little bit. It's $9.99 a month for the videos plus unlimited email consultations. I'm not a liar. Well, I'm an attorney. No, I'm not a liar. But I can tell you what I would do and where to find the forms. The only power that these New World Order Satanists have over us is through fraud and deception. My agenda is to expose it for all our benefit, but I cannot fight all the battles. Some of the exclusive content is Arlington Private Information Share, Land Deed Training, Estoppel Certificates Training, Foreclosure Estoppel Certificates Training, Corporate Denial Training, Total Rose Notice and Demand Training, Invoice Training, Notice of Void Judgment Training, Revocation Signature Training, Third-Party Witness Training, Federal Habeas Corpus Training, Revocation of Voter Registration, Criminal, I've got probably about 3 or 4 videos on that. Lawsuit Training, I've got 1, I probably need to make some more. Other training requests, I'm open to requests, but it's got to be within the scope of my channel. It's got to be something I haven't already done. Northeast Private Information Share videos, petition for writ of mandamus. That's, I haven't done the mandamus yet. That one I'm working on. That one, yeah, that'll be an extraordinary writ video. Videos have been taken down by YouTube, are in the exclusive content. They're actually on, on howto.com. First views of new uploads, all forms, files, and other instructions are available for free, linked on my videos and on my website. All exclusive content will be on howto.com, and you can buy a subscription there. Comparatorium in civil law, Roman law, civil law, Roman law, and these kangaroo courts around here, comprise a judicial inquest made by delegates or commissioners to find out and relate the truth of a cause. That's what's going on, these kangaroo courts. It's a comparatorium. Roman or papal states stretch across the central part of the Italian peninsula in an oblique direction from the Adriatic to the Mediterranean between Tuscany, Modena, and Lombardy on the northwest and Naples on the southeast area, 17,822 square miles. Population in 1833, 2.7 million. Capital's Rome, and the population of 153,000. Government is an elected monarchy, the Pope for the time being, the absolute sovereign with a consulting assembly of cardinals. That was in 1863. Rome, the capital of the Pope's territories and of Italy, and anciently the Milrus of the Roman Empire. Rome is still a large and fine city. This is 1773 Encyclopedia Britannica. Pontificality, a state and government of the Pope of Rome, and the papacy. And that's 1830 Johnson's Law Dictionary. During and after the Revolution of 1848, sentiment on the peninsula grew for the establishment of a unified Italian kingdom. Southern Italy had not been united, and northern Italy since the early medieval period, being mostly under the rule of the Kingdom of Naples and the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies. Northern Italy in the early 19th century came under the domination of the Kingdom of Sardinia, which beside its namesake island also ruled the expansive Piedmont and Savoy regions along with the French-Italian borderlands. The formerly Republic leader in southern Italy, Giuseppe Garibaldi, made common cause with the House of Savoy to overthrow the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies, and the people voted in a plebiscite to join Sardinia to form the Kingdom of Italy in 1861. The Papal States and the city of Rome were annexed to the kingdom in 1870. That's the year before the 1871 corporation. Kind of convenient, ain't it? Completing the unification of Italy, this kingdom lasted until the aftermath of World War II, when the 1946 Italian institutional referendum ended the monarchy. The history of Italy in the meantime being informed that several cities in the ecclesiastical state. And that's I just want to mention that. This is a bunch of sites here that talk about that Italy and the Pope had an ecclesiastical state, okay? This is the modern part of universal history from the earliest account, the time compiled from the original writers, 1761. And that was in 1319. There's more here in 1353 talking about an ecclesiastical state, an ecclesiastical state in 1403, more ecclesiastical state in 1568, and in 1198. This is the history of Italy. In 1198, remember the 1213 is when the King John went and did the concessions to the Pope. In 1198, Cardinal Licarius is chosen Pope and takes the name of Innocent III. He receives allegiance from the prefect of Rome and requires homage from all in the ecclesiastical state. Fictions of law. It said that every fiction must be framed according to the rules of law, that every legal fiction must have equity for its object. To prevent their evil effects, they are not allowed to be carried further than the reasons for the introduced that necessarily require. That's Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1856 edition. The sovereignty and exclusive jurisdiction over Vatican City, which Italy recognizes as pertaining to the Holy See, forbid any intervention therein on the part of the Italian government, or that any authority other than that of the Holy See shall be in there acknowledged. That's 1929 Lateran Pact, Article 4. And that's why, remember that Pope Benedict resigned? Well, Kevin Annett says that they had reported multiple felonies. He had been convicted by the common law court of rape and murder and a bunch of things. And they had provided evidence to the Spanish authorities. And the Spanish authorities contacted the Vatican and told them, don't come to Spain because you're going to get arrested if you do. And so he resigned, and he spent the rest of his life in the Vatican. Fiduciary. Fiduciary, this is all trust law. This is Roman law. This term was borrowed from civil law. The Roman law is called a fiduciary heir. The person who was instituted heir was charged to deliver the succession. So this is all trust law and Roman law. Fiduciary. At the very bottom, fiduciary may be defined to be in trust, in competence. Okay, so it's trust law. Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1856 edition. Without a formal and sufficient indictment or information, the court does not acquire subject matter jurisdiction, and thus an accused may not be punished for a crime. Well, they just make it up all the time. So there's no true bill. It's not signed. Judge modified the indictment. Joe Geruzo will tell you all about that. I've seen indictments that they're not signed. There's no true bill, and the judge doesn't have any trouble with it at all. No receipt of the court reporter. That's supposed to happen here in Texas. They just ignore it all. If the record does not show upon its face the facts necessary to give the court jurisdiction, they'll presume not to have existed. But you have to object, and it has to be on the record before the show trial, because the courts of appeal have ruled that if you don't object before then, you can't object after. So you got to object before. I think that with Ken, we've made all sorts of objections, and so I think that he's certainly got appealable issues. That's why they want a plea bargain, I think, because he's really done a good job on that stuff. My book, Trump, is now available. Trump, a true American patriot or not? Mike Blackwell asked me to write the book, and it took me about 6 weeks to write the book because all I did is took a lawsuit and manipulated it and turned it into the book. But he hired a company to help us with it, and they wrote the stuff on the back here, and I think they kind of nailed it here, so I'm going to read it. It says, in Trump, a true American patriot or not, Glenn Ferd and Mike Blackwell reveal the depths of corruption, deceit, manipulation infesting our political system for hundreds of years, regardless of political affiliation. Read the hard evidence that exposes how our elected officials sold Americans into slavery. Understand the Founding Fathers' true intent, where they formed our Republican form of government. Discover the influence of the satanic Roman cult on our politicians and political system. Does Donald Trump want to transfer power back to we the people? In Trump, you will see the great battle that is upon us. And you got that right. We're seeing the battle. There's a lot of stuff going on nowadays. I think they nailed it. You can order the book on Amazon.com or my website. It's $40 plus shipping. I prefer you order my website. Amazon does not provide autographed books. If you want it autographed, you got to let me know. You want to know the origins of the deep state? Who's behind it? It's in the book. You want to know why it's called the Trump administration? It's in the book. We talked about it a little bit earlier here today. You want to know how Trump came to be president? He was invited by, well, they say 200 generals. There's actually a story. There's a YouTube video. I actually downloaded it because I wanted to have it. There's a YouTube video with Jerome Corsi where he says that he was visited by 5 generals in 2015, and they told him they were going to overthrow Obama. And he said, well, you can do that if you want, but you might want to go talk to Donald Trump first. And 3 months later, he gets a phone call. They decided not to overthrow Obama because Donald Trump had agreed for him for president. So he was invited, they say, by 200 generals. Trump was actually said by 200 generals. So I guess we'll see. Do you want to know who owns Congress? Why do you think Pelosi would get up there and say, we can't read this bill until after we pass it? It's because she takes orders from who owns Congress. We're going to see it here in this video about who owns Congress. You want to know why they're called law enforcement officers? Because they're enforcing the martial law. I have a book called The Law of War, United States Law of War. It's about that thick, and it's about 4 inches thick. And look up law enforcement officers in there. It's all over the place. You want to know how you have become their slave? Do you want to know what the root cause of the War of Independence was? The same thing that's going on right now. It's in the book. Do you want to know why every president goes to visit the pimp? Well, I meant the Pope. No, the pimp. On their first international trip, it's in the book. Now, and I want to say here that this is nothing to say about people that happen to be Catholic. I mean, friends of mine that are Catholic have been telling me this stuff for years, and I refused to believe it until it just became so overwhelming. So, I mean, there's lots of wonderful people that are Catholic, and that has nothing to do with the Vatican. Matter of fact, Joe's sister, who's devout Catholic, when Francis was still alive, she used to call him Frank, which is basically extremely disrespectful, you know. Anyways, so I already told you about Mike Blackwell and Jerome Corsi. It's 95% provable fact, some opinion. Howard Hughes, they say that there was actually a David Wilcock video where Howard Hughes got blackballed after into World War II. And so he got some young ladies to go and sleep with the military-industrial complex types and find out from Pillow Top what they were planning on doing. And that's when he found out that they were planning on doing what they're doing right now. And so he had published some manuals and procedures on how to defeat the whole thing. And Kennedy was actually implementing that stuff. Remember, he circulated $6 billion of the U.S. Treasury notes. And they killed Kennedy, they killed his brother, they killed a bunch of people. And so Howard Hughes figured he's probably next. That's why he was hiding out all the time, I think. Anyways, and then the helicopter crash in 1984, that was Trump. I think Trump, they tried to kill him too. And I think that there was a helicopter crash in 1984. What I think, my opinion, okay, this is my opinion, that all these billionaires get approached by the New World Order crowd and they get told you're going to go along with our program or you're going to turn up dead. Remember, Bill Gates went to see Warren Buffett, and all of a sudden Warren Buffett donated $5 billion to the Gates Foundation. And then since then, they've had a falling out. And Bill Gates is in hot water, I think, right now. I think that, matter of fact, I heard that Fauci's been indicted in like about 60 countries around the world and trying to extradite him. So the shit is coming down. Anyways, there was a helicopter crash in 1984, and Trump was supposed to have been on the flight, and he canceled at the last minute, and 3 of his executives got killed. And so I think Trump knows what he's dealing with. In reality, they're not after me, they're after you. I'm just in the way. Thank you, Donald Trump. For those who've been wronged and betrayed, I am your retribution. So what happened is after the election was stolen, there's a bunch of stories, okay? And I've heard a lot of things, and so some of this is hearsay, some of it's provable. Anyways, I don't know how much you remember that they found out those Dominion voting machines were transmitting their data to a satellite that was owned by an Italian defense contractor and leased to the Vatican. And there was a big shakeup in the Italian government, and a lady that's similar to Trump wound up becoming prime minister. And I heard the rumor is that we went and seized. There's two stories. One was 250 airplane loads, and the other one is 650 airplane loads. Now, I don't know which one it is, but I was able to verify. There was a website that where the Italian police said they actually saw U.S. troops in the Vatican around that time, and there's stories about a possible firefight, where the U.S. troops had to force their way in. Anyways, I don't know. Some people say that after that, Frank disappeared too. So he might have got killed in the whole thing or something. And there was a hologram Frank after that. I don't know. That's all rumors. Anyways, I happen to work on airplanes all my life. And so I'm figuring that the big airplane's about 100 tons. That's 20,000, 200,000 pounds. And that's about the maximum an airplane could probably take, the big ones. And so if it was 100 tons, 250 airplane loads, that'd be 25,000 tons. If it was 650 airplane loads, it'd be 65,000 tons. And Fort Knox is supposed to have 55,000 tons. So it's basically another Fort Knox. I've heard there's 3 military bases that are packed with gold in this country, and it's all going to be used to fund the new republic when it gets restored. I guess we'll see. So there's 2 enemies of the people, or criminals in government. Let us tie the second down with the chains of the Constitution so they don't become the legalized version of the first. And that's exactly what's happened with the Vatican. The greatest danger to American freedom is a government that ignores the Constitution. You got that right. Thank you, Thomas Jefferson. All court cases are warfare. You're their enemy. They are your enemy. You got to get your head around that, and you got to attack them. It's warfare. And there's knockdown, drag out warfare. And you have to understand that. You're never tell the enemy what you have planned. They're not your friends. You have to set them up and sandbag the bastards. Any violations of their procedures or denials of due process, I've never seen any case where they followed all of their codes. You can ask Ken about that. They don't do anything right. The corrupt, yes, Randy Kelton, he'll tell you the same thing. The corrupt Star Chamber courts of England require defendants to have counsel, and they force you to have their counsel all the time, okay? The guy that is in jail in Chicago, he didn't stand up to him, and they forced him with this standby counsel. The other guy that I'm helping, they forced him with the standby counsel. He fired him, and then they forced him. So it's a Star Chamber. It's a limitation on the common law. Although the right to self-representation is not a license to abuse the dignity of the courtroom, neither is it a license of the court to impose upon the defendant its own choice of counsel. The defendant's Sixth Amendment right to choose counsel or to proceed pro se is an essential part of his right to a fair trial. That's Ferretta versus California. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Let me go and check YouTube and see what's happening over there. Let's see here, see if there's any questions. Anybody got any questions? Put them in all block capital letters, please, and I'll see if I can answer them. I don't see any questions right now. Okay, so let's keep moving. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Don't forget to follow me on Steemit, Sovereignty International. Don't forget to like this video on YouTube. Don't forget to click the bell next to the subscribe button so you're notified when there's a new upload. And on Steemit, don't forget to vote and make your comments. This is the front page of my channel. The subscribe button's already been clicked because otherwise it'll be red and the arrow's pointing at the bell. A court can be a court of general jurisdiction for some purposes and a court of limited jurisdiction for other purposes. When therefore a court of general jurisdiction proceeds under a special statute, and it's always under a special statute, it becomes a court of limited jurisdiction for purpose of such proceeding. Accordingly, where a court of general jurisdiction undertakes to carry out a special power, a decision made in the exercise of such power is treated as a ruling of a court of limited jurisdiction, and the presumption applicable to a court of general jurisdiction that it acted within the scope of this jurisdiction does not apply. It's familiar law that when a special statutory authority and derogation of common law is conferred on courts of general jurisdiction, such a court of general jurisdiction becomes quad hoc, a court of inferior or limited jurisdiction. To be the statutes which would deprive a citizen of the rights of person or property without a regular trial according to the course of usage of common law would not be the law of the land. There's no common law courts here. They're all a bunch of bail priests. A ministerial act is an act that a public officer is required to perform in a prescribed manner in obedience to the mandate of legal authority without regard to his own judgment or opinion concerning such act's propriety or impropriety when a given state of facts exists. Discretion, on the other hand, is the power conferred on public functionaries to act officially according to the dictates of their own judgment. When acting to enforce a statute and its subsequent amendments to the present date, the judge of municipal court is acting as an administrative officer. Remember, administrative officer is Roman law, it's the Vatican. And not in a judicial capacity. Courts administering or enforcing statutes. Remember, capitis diminutio is a statutable action. So they're spelling your name in all block capital letters, you're a slave. Administrating or enforcing statute do not act judicially, so they're legislative. So then if they're not a judge, they're a legislator. Ministerially, merely act as extension of the agency, but only in a ministerial and not in discretionary capacity. Check out my other videos, Baxter Thieves playlist, Roman cult playlist, bankrupt corporate so-called governments, bar members 1 through 9, do-it-yourself how not to volunteer for the selective service in the draft, martial laws here, do-it-yourself no income tax, do-it-yourself free mail, do-it-yourself kangaroo courts 1 through 35, now it's 36. Canada border pigs playlist, lots of pigs on the border in Canada. Bar members and their satanic connections playlist. It's the accepted rule, not only in state courts, but in the federal courts as well, that when a judge is enforcing administrative law, they're described as mere extensions of the administrative agency for superior reviewing purposes as a ministerial clerk for the agency. Judges have become involved in enforcement of mere statutes, civil or criminal nature, act as mere clerks for the involved agency. In other words, it's a legislative act. The word administrative is synonymous with the word executive. The word administrative connotes or pertains to administration, especially managing, as by managing or conducting or superintending the execution, application, or conduct of persons or things. Thus, those administrative acts are those acts which are necessary to be done to carry out legislative policies as a legislator. Ministerial officers are incompetent to receive grants of judicial power from the legislature. Their acts in attempting to exercise such powers are nullities. Where there's no jurisdiction, there's no judge, the proceeding is as nothing. Such has been the law from the days of Marshal Sale. So history, let's look at history. In 1861, the southern states walked out of Congress. Congress failed to have a quorum. Congress could not conduct business. On the 15th of April of 1861, under executive authority, Lincoln ordered Congress to reconvene in 12 Stat 1258. That's executive order number 1. And they've been operating under executive authority ever since. Now it's like 10,700 or something like that. In 1871, Congress created a municipal corporation at 16 Stat 419. Governments to descend to the level of a mere private corporation and take on the characteristics of a mere private citizen where a private corporate commercial paper and securities is concerned. For purposes of suit, such corporations and individuals are regarded as entities entirely separate from government. Two national governments exist, the one to be maintained under the Constitution with all its restrictions, the other to be maintained by Congress outside and independently of that instrument. That's the dissenting opinion, Downs versus Bidwell. The 1871 corporations operating under the Commerce Clause. The Supreme Court ruled on a case that Lincoln failed to like. I'm not sure if it's ex parte Milligan, but it might be. Lincoln sent troops to the Supreme Court, resulted in Rule 45. Rule 45, all process of this court issues in the name of the President of the United States. Balzac versus People of Puerto Rico. The United States District Court is not a true United States court established under the Constitution, Article 3, to administer the judicial power of the United States, but was created by virtue of the sovereign congressional faculty granted under Article 4, Section 3 of making all needful rules and regulations respecting territory belonging to the United States. Congress passed the Code of Law for the District of Columbia, 31 Stat 1189, March 3rd, 1901, which is now known as United States Code, which all courts, federal and state, operate under. There's no common law offenses against the United States, only those acts which Congress has forbidden with penalties for disobedience and command or crimes. Derogation of common law, inferior court of limited jurisdiction. Under Texas law, no act or omission is a crime unless made so by statute. The legislature may create an offense and in the same enactment provide exceptions to its application. Derogation of common law means it's an inferior court of limited jurisdiction. It's a legislative act. Assumption, quasi-contracts. This is the contracts they're assaulting you with. They use the fiction so they can assault you with their quasi-contracts. And it's a legislative act. Assumption in its origin an action of tort, assumption soon transformed into an action of contract, becoming afterwards a remedy where there was neither tort nor contract, based at first only upon an express promise. It was afterwards supported upon an implied promise and even upon a fictitious promise. Introduces a special manifestation of the action on the case. It soon acquired the dignity of a distinct form of action which superseded debt, became concurrent with account, with case upon a bailment, warranty, bills of exchange, and competed with equity in the case of essentially equitable quasi-contracts growing under the principle of unjust enrichment. And this is a history of assumption. Both in Roman and English law, there are certain obligations which are not in truth contractual, but which the law treats as if they were. They're contractual in law, but not in fact, being the subject matter of a fictitious extension of the sphere of contract to cover obligations which do not in reality fall within it. Constructive quasi-contracts are based solely upon a legal fiction or fiction of law. They got to assault you with that minor estate, that quasi-contract, to get a quasi-contract. The penal action is an action on a penal statute, an action for recovery of penalty given by statute, where an action is founded entirely upon a statute and the only object of it is to recover a penalty or forfeiture. Such action is a penal action. The words penal and penalty in their strict primary sense denote a punishment, whether corporal or pecuniary, imposed and enforced. Notice pecuniary. Okay, we're going to be talking a little bit more about that in a minute. Imposed and enforced by the state for a crime offense against its laws. So there's corporal punishment and pecuniary punishment. The noun penalty is defined forfeiture to be forfeited for non-compliance with an agreement. The words forfeit and penalty are substantially synonymous. Pecuniary cause, such as arise either from the withholding of ecclesiastical dues or the doing and neglecting of some act relating to the church. Thereby some damage accrues to the plaintiff towards obtaining satisfaction for which he's permitted to institute a suit in the spiritual court. These courts are all spiritual courts. These are bail priests. For instance, are the subtracting and withholding of tithes from the parson or vicar, the non-payment of ecclesiastical dues to the clergy, as pensions, mortuaries, compositions, and the like. A penal action is one founded entirely upon a statute, brought with the sole object of recovering a penalty. See, penal and plenary, remember plenary? It's a dictatorship. Anyways, they're both similar words. Remedial action is one brought to obtain compensation or indemnity. Penal action is a civil suit brought to recovery of statutory forfeiture when inflicted as punishment for an offense against the public. Such actions are civil actions on the one hand, closely related to criminal prosecutions, and another to actions for private injuries in which the party aggrieved may by statute recover punitive damages. The United States shall guarantee to every state in the Union a Republican form of government as one of we the people, and demand it as a state in this Union because we the people are the state. The state does not owe its origin to the government of the United States in the highest of any of its branches. It was in existence before it. It derives its authority from the same pure and sacred source as itself, the voluntary and deliberate choice of the people, and that's Chisholm versus Georgia. A Republican form of government fails to include the District of Columbia Commerce Clause, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3, because of Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. So they're bringing the District of Columbia outside 10 miles square. They're perjuring their oath. Don't get me going. They're just nothing but a bunch of scum. If there was common law, if there was fucking Christians in this country, they'd be getting their necks stretched and we wouldn't be having this problem. To exercise exclusive legislation, all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles square, as made by session of particular states and the acceptance of Congress, become the seat of government. This Constitution and laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution and laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. That's Article 6, Clause 2. Every corporation, for all its purposes, is an agency of the bitch. And that's Section 3 of the Government Operation Code of Canada. Section 2 definitions in this act. Owned means subject to the regulations. If you're owned, you're property. And this is Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2. The Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States. A U.S. citizen's other property belonging to the United States. All subjects over which the sovereign power of a state extends are objects of taxation, but those over which it does not extend are upon the soundest principles exempt from taxation. This proposition may be almost be pronounced self-evident. The sovereignty of a state extends to everything which exists by its own authority or is introduced by its permission. But does it extend to those means which are employed by Congress to carry into execution powers conferred on that body by the people of the United States? We think it demonstrable that it does not. Those powers are not given by the people of a single state. They're given by the people of the United States to a government whose laws made in pursuance of the Constitution are declared to be supreme. Consequently, the people of a single state cannot confer a sovereignty which will extend over them. Nor does the conclusion by any means suppose the superiority of the judicial to the legislative power. It only supposes that the power of the people is superior to both. The sovereignty of the United States resides in the people. Congress cannot invoke the sovereignty of the people to override their will as declared in the Constitution. When a state forms a constitution which is approved by Congress, it's a stop to deny its validity. That's why when these liars, when these perjurers get up there and say the 14th Amendment was ratified or the 16th Amendment was ratified, and any of that other shit, they're perjuring their oath of office and the courts won't look into it. You cannot challenge that. That's why I'm challenging it on the First Amendment, because Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. They routinely, unlawfully arrest you with the objective of you exercising your right to resist their unlawful arrest so the military police, the pigs, can have an excuse to murder you. They're engaging in their endless wars and getting you into their killing fields. Either way, their bankster handlers get to pillage the fake money from the Treasury Direct account. So drawing a complaint at 31 Stat 1666, they get a commission off of that. Issuing a warrant of arrest, issuing a commitment. When they sell you into slavery, they get a commission off of that. Entering a return, issuing a subpoena, drawing a bond, administering an oath, recognizing of witnesses, transcripts. Why do you think the transcripts are so damn expensive? Because the fucking bail priest is getting money off of it. It's all about selling you into slavery. Roman law is all about slavery. The fake judge operating under Roman law is busy making money by selling you into slavery. And the attorneys are working for them. This is how they populate the prisons. There's more people in Texas prisons than a percentage of the population that there are in Russia, more than the Soviet Union, more than communist China, more than any other state. My history of the Jesuits is not eloquently written, but is supported by unquestionable authorities, and is very particular and very horrible. There, the Jesuit order's restoration in 1814 by Pope Pius VII is indeed a step towards darkness, cruelty, despotism, and death. I do not like the appearance of the Jesuits, except there was a body of men who merited eternal damnation on earth and in hell. It is the Society of Ignatius de Loyola. And that's John Adams, second President of the United States. Within 20 years, this country is going to rule the world. Kings and emperors will soon pass away, and the democracy of the United States will take their place. When the United States rules the world, the Catholic Church will rule the world. And that's Roman Catholic Archbishop James E. Quigley, Chicago Daily Tribune, May 5th, 1903. And there, the pimp came and spoke to Congress, to his owned and operated Congress. And that red text on there is really hard to read. So 24th of September 2015. So we'll go start right here on the left, and I got it on here in black and white, much easier to read. That's a Roman Achaean military staff carried in battle by all Roman canons, planted on all conquered nations. And this arrow is pointing at this thing right here, and I'll have a better picture to show you here in a second. The second one is a devout Roman Catholic honorary degree from Jesuit Scranton University. That's pointing at Biden, who was vice president at the time, right here. And then the next one is a Roman bundle of rods bound to a weapon symbolizing subservient under the rule of a single man. And that's this text right here, pointing at these Roman fascists. And the last one, devout Roman Catholic trained by Jesuits, installed the first Jesuit chaplain of the house. This is a satanic religious ceremony, is what it is. Okay, and there's Boner, or Beaner, or whatever his name was, that was speaker. And there's a pimp right there. And this is a nice clear picture. Okay, that's the Roman Achaean military staff, and these are the two Roman fascists. Why do you think Donald Trump's first international trip includes the Roman cult on the itinerary? Why do you think the Pope looks so angry in his pictures with Donald Trump? Maybe it's because justice is coming. Him and Obama are laughing and chuckling, having a great old time. But Trump, he's not too happy about it. Maybe it's because justice is coming. Pope Francis commits idolatry at the feet of a Mary statue. He's a Satanist. Pope Nicholas V issued the papal bull Dum Diversus on 18th of June, 1452. It authorized Alfonso V of Portugal to reduce any Saracens, which is Muslims, and pagans, and any other unbelievers, anybody that's not Catholic, to perpetual slavery to facilitate the Portuguese slave trade from West Africa. The same Pope wrote the bull Romanus Pontifex on January 5th, 1455, to the same Alfonso as a follow-up to Dum Diversus. It extended to the Catholic nations of Europe dominion over discovered lands during the Age of Discovery, along with sanctifying the seizure of non-Christian lands. It encouraged the non-Catholic lands, would be a better way of putting it. It encouraged the enslavement of native non-Christian Catholic peoples in Africa and the New World. We weighing all in singular the premises with due mediation, and noting we have formerly with other letters of ours granted among other things free and ample faculty to the aforesaid King Alfonso to invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens, pagans whatsoever, and other enemies of Christ, enemies of the Vatican, wheresoever placed, and the kingdoms, dukedoms, principality, dominions, and possessions of all movable and immovable goods whatsoever held and possessed by them, and to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery, and to apply and appropriate to himself and his successors the kingdoms, dukedom, countries, principalities, dominions, possessions, and goods to convert them to his and their use and profit, by having secured the same faculty, the same King Alfonso, and by his authority, the aforesaid infant justly and lawfully has acquired and possessed and doth possess these islands, lands, harbors, seas, and they do of right belong and pertain to the King Alfonso and his successors. In 1493, Alexander VI issued the bull Inter Serrera, stating, "Oh, one Christian nation did not have the right to establish dominion over other lands previously dominated by other Christian nation, thus establishing the law of nations." Together, the Dum Diversas, the Romanus Pontifex, and the Inter Serrera came to serve as a basis for the justification for the doctrine of discovery, the global slave trade of the 15th and 16th centuries, and the age of imperialism. Let's take a little break. I got to use the restroom.
Okay. Glenn, are you okay?
I'll be back.
Don't get me started.
I'm gonna get a bumper sticker. Okay.
So what's new?
Just preparing for show trial. So we're gonna do a mock simulation.
Was that in
What?
then?
You want to be a judge or prosecutor? Cop?
You know, I got COVID on for a while. I could do it, and I could force myself. I almost didn't come today.
You not familiar?
I lost my ability to taste and smell.
You try to make it.
Nicotine natural. In an hour, I just made about 6 or 8 hours. And then came back to work. My sister said she knows three people. She's a school teacher. She knows the three people. I hope this is fine. I went to school. It's, this morning, they all feel inspired. Which is really not like.
Your sister knows three people who got it. It's something around.
Is there any evidence under which
Sure, you're the water. Your brother.
I've heard all of this before. That's true.
No, did you really?
You know, they just figure out a way. So you don't want to be our slave? Fine, not a problem. We'll spell your name in all capital letters, not going to tell you about it. We're going to act as if you're a slave, and that's the end of it.
I didn't have this book on, but they said, I've read this book, have you?
You're a measure of state, we're not going to tell you about it.
I said, I'm not against it.
All your bills are
I
paid.
think something is changing though. Is that I heard was survey they did recently. And almost nobody trusts the Department of Justice.
Policy officer, and I stumbled on it. They're like, oh, almost.
It's like an SQ.
Thank you so much.
They just,
I mean, you know, I was just thinking this morning, white people in America have spent millions of dollars in education.
Here, do this.
It's when it's
Put this on there, scrape that, so I can choose a better than a 20%.
yes, thanks for it.
I texted her.
And I don't want it.
And the, like, well, Bill,
She's as guilty as you're gone.
there,
Maybe.
3 minutes.
What this really does, 18%. Very civil law.
Civil law. That's what we have.
Either they're not just criminals, they're criminally insane.
This is the
I mean,
stuff.
they're just not ordinary.
No.
But I saw this banker
It's
Norway.
quasi
Some words.
I think it is.
This guy.
But it is. And the reason I say that, because you,
Okay, we're back.
are you the federal government?
Okay, we're back. Let me look on YouTube, see if there's any questions. Nope. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So, From 1203 to 1805, 50 million Christians died, suffering at the hands of Rome because they believed in Christ alone. They died through Europe, especially Spain, for they saw all but Christ as vain. He who suffered his death for men to save them from their awful sins, 600 years of martyred saints that history cannot erase. With iron heel and iron hand, the Roman popes rule the land. The Rothschilds have been part of the Jesuit order since, okay, must turn it off. The Rothschilds have been part of the Jesuit order since way before 1776. The Maltese cross indicates membership and allegiance to the sovereign military order of Malta, a Masonic order created in 1099 by direct descendants of Roman emperors, of which the Jesuit order is a brand. The Pope claims you're not Christian if you own the gun. Yeah, he doesn't want you to be able to defend yourself when they go and assault you. The sensational account of the most horrifying religious massacre of the 20th century by Admiral Manhattan. He was a Knight of Malta, by the way. That means they're not all bad. Admiral Manhattan is the world's foremost authority in Roman Catholicism and politics. A resident of London during World War II, he operated a radio station called Radio Freedom, broadcasting to occupied Europe. He was the author of over 20 books, including the bestseller The Vatican and World Politics, twice Book of the Month, going through 57 editions. He was a Great Briton who risked his life daily to expose the darkest secrets of the papacy. His books were number one on the Forbidden Index for the past 50 years. Editor's note, this issue in 1986. In 2006, the record is now 70 years in the Forbidden Book list. So the preface to the American edition, the Vatican's Holocaust is not a misnomer, an accusation, and even less a speculation. It is an historical fact. Rabid nationalism and religious dogmatism were its two main ingredients. During the existence of Croatia as an independent Catholic state, over 700,000 men, women, and children perished. Many were executed, tortured, died of starvation, buried alive, or were burned to death. Hundreds were forced to become Catholic. Catholic padres in concentration camps, Catholic priests were officers of the military corps, which committed such atrocities. 700,000 in a total population of a few million purportedly would have been as if 1/3 of the USA population had been exterminated by a Catholic militia. What has been gathered in this book will vindicate the veracity of these facts. Dates, names, places, as well as photos are there to prove them. They should all become known to the American public and not to foster vindictiveness, but to warn them of the damning danger which racialism and sectarianism, when allied with religious intolerance, can bring to any contemporary nation, whether in Europe or in the New World. This work should be assessed without prejudice as a lesson, but even more vital as a warning to the future of Americans, beginning with that of the USA. Admiral Manhattan, 1986. An armed Serbia could have easily prevented this Holocaust. Thank God for the Second Amendment to the Constitution, which guarantees the right to bear arms. Freedom of religion and our armed citizenry go hand in hand. Is the only guarantee that this won't happen in the U.S. Editor's note, it is the Vatican one world government that doesn't want you to have the right to own arms or use any means to defend yourself. Remember, George Bush Sr. talked about a new world order. Sounds like a one world government. Anyways, this is the Jewish Encyclopedia. At the top it says, meanwhile, the national reactionary parties in France desired a counterbalance the Semitic influence of the Rothschilds by establishing a banking concern which would be essentially Catholic. And then down in the lower part here, it says, in a somewhat curious sequel to the attempt to set up a Catholic competitor to the Rothschild, that at the present time, the latter are the guardians of the papal treasure. So they're all connected. When government has all the guns, this is the way it works. Any society that give up a little liberty to gain a little security will deserve neither and lose both. Just following orders is never a valid excuse or justification for immoral criminal behavior, and this lame attempt to abdicate personal responsibility should never be accepted as a valid excuse for such behavior. Pope claims you're not Christian if you own a gun. He doesn't want you to be able to defend yourself. Every great injustice has been at the hands of someone just following orders. Order followers are the servant of evil. You assist an evil system most effectively by obeying its orders and decrees. An evil system never deserves such allegiance. Allegiance to it means partaking of the evil. A good person will resist an evil system with his or her whole soul. Order followers are the ones that keep the system of slavery in place. Mark Passio. A republic, if you can keep it. Oh, look at all the law-abiding citizens and the brave soldiers doing their job. Those who make their fortunes from you being sick are the same people who will tell you what will make you well. Death by medicine. Matter of fact, that's called medicide. The war is not meant to be won, it's meant to be continuous. Why does the government want to ban semi-automatic rifles? Because they know you won't get into boxcars willingly. China established gun control in 1935. From 1948 to 1952, 20 million political dissidents unable to defend themselves were rounded up and exterminated. The illusion of free choice. The only reason for disarming people is to make them powerless against tyranny. We will take your guns because we have made an agreement to do so, called freedom from war. Yeah, right. The United States is third in murders throughout the world. If you remove Chicago, Detroit, Washington, D.C., St. Louis, and New Orleans, the United States is 189th of 193 countries in the entire world. P.S. All 5 cities have strict gun control laws. The Pope claims you're not Christian if you own a gun. War is when your government tells you who the enemy is. Revolution is when you figure it out for yourself. Original assault rifle, 1774, banned from import. 1775, British attempt confiscation. 1776, revolution. When liberty and freedom are at stake, your silence isn't golden, it's yellow. I didn't say it'd be easy, I said it'd be the truth. They want you dead. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing the same object evinces the design to reduce them under absolute despotism, that's dictatorship, folks, that's what's happening today. It is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. A republic, if you can keep it. The Republican is the only form of government which is not eternally at open or secret war with the rights of mankind. That's why they tell you you're in a democracy. This is all the same things that precipitated the War of Independence as currently constituted. All cases, court cases, are satanic religious ceremonies, inquisitions under Roman law, and all judges are papal clergy, bail priests. And that's the end.
Good job, Glenn.
So I guess we might as well, I'll end my live stream. I don't see any questions. Do I offer specific information remedy for IRS issues? Well, I sued the IRS and took it to the Supreme Court twice, and they don't want to talk to me now, but it comes down to don't ask, don't tell. In other words, don't put yourself in a position that I've got videos. Do it yourself, no income tax. Do it yourself, no. I got videos. Go to my website. You'll find all of that stuff under the free videos on my website. I could go into this all day long. So yeah, and that looks like the only question. So I think we'll stop. It's been 2 hours anyway, so let's end the live.